I was supposed to die that day. Not in the poetic sense, not metaphorically. I mean that with full sincerity, I should have died when that truck tore through the intersection and crumpled our car like aluminum foil. But I didn't. And for the life of me, I've started to wonder if that was the real tragedy. They say moments of impact freeze in your memory. Not for me. I don't remember the collision. I remember something stranger. I remember waking up in the hospital, my head full of static, and the nurse saying, "She's stable, sir." She's lucky. Lucky. That word keeps echoing even now, even after everything. It took me days to walk. The bruising on my side made each breath feel like I was inhaling nails. But I forced myself out of bed every day to see her. I sat next to her hospital bed with that sterile beige blanket tucked up under her chin, her foredrip ticking like some twisted metronome. She wouldn't talk much. Said she was tired. Said her head hurt. And I believed her. Of course I did. You believe the people you build your life with. At least that's the theory. On the fourth day, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I had been sitting in silence beside her bed, peeling the label off a water bottle, when it lit up for the fifth time in a minute. I picked it up, thinking maybe it was family checking in, or a friend. The name that flashed on the screen didn't make sense. It wasn't a name, actually. It was a heart emoji. Just that. A single red heart. No contact name. Just a message underneath. I miss the sound you make when you're happy. Can't wait for us again. Us again? I read it 5 times before I could even move. My chest felt like it caved in. Not because of the accident this time. I unlocked her phone. She was asleep. Not in a deep morphine sleep either. Just dozing lightly, the kind of sleep you pretend to have when you don't want to talk to someone in the room. She didn't stir as I scrolled through the thread. There were dozens of messages. Maybe hundreds. Photos too. The kind that weren't obscene but were so much worse, playful selfies in places I didn't recognize, the kind of texts that made it clear this wasn't just a fling but something ongoing. Real. Rehearsed. Practiced. I didn't feel rage. Not at first. What hit me was nausea, a wave of it deep in my gut like I'd swallowed something rotten. Then came the stillness. That eerie calm, the kind that makes your ears ring and your limbs go cold. I looked over at her. She was awake. Eyes still shut, but awake. I knew it. You can feel it in the room. You can smell a lie like that. And then she opened one eye. Slowly. Like she already knew what I'd seen. We didn't speak. Not that night. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, I came in with her favorite coffee. Set it down beside her. She reached for it and said thank you like nothing happened. Like the night before was just static in my head. And I played along for now. Because if she was going to lie to me with her whole chest, then I wanted to see how deep the performance would go. I asked about her recovery. She talked about her wrist like it was the only thing broken. I asked about her phone. She said she hadn't looked at it in days. She said that with her eyes right on mine. I leaned back in the chair and just stared at her, searching her face for a flicker of guilt. Nothing. That's when I realized something that hit me harder than the crash ever did. She didn't regret it. Not a single part of her was sorry. And that, I think, was the beginning of the real story that I didn't speak to anyone about it. Not my brother. Not my best friend since childhood. Not even my mother, who called every day since the crash like I was still 12 and had scraped my knee on the playground. I kept it all inside because I wasn't ready to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. I needed more. I needed to see it unravel. I needed her to expose herself without even realizing it. So I played dumb. Every day I visited the hospital, I acted like nothing had changed. I brought her magazines she wouldn't read, flowers she wouldn't smell, coffee she barely sipped. I watched her like someone waiting for an actor to forget their lines. And it didn't take long. On the 6th day, she told me she was having vivid dreams. Said she kept dreaming she was in Paris with someone, walking along the Seine, holding hands. Then she laughed and said, "Isn't that weird?" She never once dreamed of me after the crash. Not once. I nodded. "Maybe it means something," I said. "Oh, come on," she giggled. "Don't get jealous of my brain." But I wasn't jealous. I was cataloging. That night I went back to her phone. She was asleep again, or pretending to be. I knew the passcode by then. It was the same as always, the date of our first vacation together. Irony really does like to sharpen its blade. The messages were still coming in. Not constantly, but enough. The heart emoji guy, I eventually found his name buried deeper in the thread, Nathan. A name I had never heard her say out loud. No saved contact, no photos of him, just his words, smooth, too smooth. Voice notes of him saying things like, I hate knowing you're in a hospital bed and I can't touch you, and I keep playing our last night over and over. Our last night. So I scrolled. I went back far. Weeks. Months. 2 months before the crash, she was already deep into whatever this was. Meeting him. Lying to me about where she was going. One message stood out, just told him I'm meeting an old friend from college. He bought it. He always does. She meant me. That night, I didn't go home. I drove nowhere. I just kept turning corners until the city felt like a blur. I parked outside a 24-hour diner and stared at my own reflection in the dark window for an hour. Not thinking. Just feeling the weight of being mocked in plain sight. Of being the stupid one. The placeholder. I came back the next day ready. This time, I didn't ask her about her phone. I asked her about the lie. The one from that exact message. I said, hey, remember 2 months ago when you said you were meeting Laura from college? She blinked. Too quickly. Yeah. What did you guys talk about? Her face twitched. Just barely. Catching up. You know. Life stuff. I stared into her so long she looked away. Then I smiled. Not a kind one. The kind that lets the other person know you're not blind anymore. And I said, yeah, I'd love to meet Laura sometime. She seems to really bring something out in you. She didn't say anything. She knew. And now she was waiting to see what I'd do. She didn't realize I'd already made a plan. 2 days later, she was cleared for discharge. I was the one who wheeled her out of the hospital. The nurse who handed me her discharge papers smiled like we were a couple who had just been through something together. I think she even said, you two must really love each other. Most husbands don't stay the whole time anymore. And I smiled right back. Because I had a role to play too, didn't I? The ride home was silent. She looked out the window the whole time like she was watching a movie where none of the characters meant anything to her. She didn't ask where we were going. She knew it was our house. She knew I wouldn't make a scene, not yet. She winced when I helped her out of the car, holding her side, letting out these little gasps of pain that sounded so rehearsed I could barely stand it. And once inside, she made a beeline for the couch, pulled the throw blanket over herself like a victim, and asked if I could make her tea. I made it, not because I cared, because I needed her comfortable, at ease, lowered guard. I sat across from her and watched her scroll through her phone. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. The angle of the screen was wide open. I think she was testing me, wondering how far she could push. People like her don't confess. They escalate. They dare you to call them out. So I did. Tell me about Nathan. She didn't flinch. That was the worst part. She didn't drop the phone or panic. She just paused, blinked once, and said, what? You heard me. She looked at me like I had just asked her for the square root of grief. Are you checking my phone? I didn't answer. She sat up straighter. You went through my phone? While I was in the hospital. I said nothing. She laughed. Not loud. The kind of laugh people use when they're buying time. I can't believe you do that to me. That's a huge invasion. I leaned forward. You were cheating. She narrowed her eyes. You don't know what you saw. That right there. That line. That specific sentence. That was when I knew there was no redemption coming. No apology. No regret. Not even denial, because she wasn't denying anything. She was just trying to confuse the scoreboard. Flip the blame. Rewrite the whole narrative and make me the villain for discovering the truth. I stood up. Her voice followed me, sharp and quick. You don't get to walk away like you're the hurt one. I turned around so fast the glass of tea on the table rattled. I was in a car with you. My body still hurts every time I move. I sat in that hospital every day thinking maybe this would bring us closer again. That nearly dying together would actually fix something. Her jaw clenched. And instead, I said quieter now. I found out I was already alone. Silence. I thought that maybe something in her would break. A tear. A sliver of guilt. A sentence that started with, "I didn't mean to." But no. She just stood up and said, "You should have been paying attention months ago." Then she walked upstairs. Slowly, holding the rail with her good hand. Like she'd just won something. I didn't follow. Not because I was defeated. Because I was done playing her game. She thought it ended with silence. But I already had the next move. And it was going to burn. She stayed upstairs the rest of that night. Didn't come down for dinner. Didn't text. Didn't even slam the door because drama wasn't her weapon. Control was. Cold, quiet control. The kind that dares you to come crawling just to make things normal again. But I didn't. I stayed downstairs, sitting in the half-dark living room with the TV off, thinking about the messages, the lies, the casual smirks she'd worn since the crash like none of this meant a thing. I thought about all the stories I had believed, about late nights at work, about how tired she always was, about how she never seemed to want to talk or touch or laugh. She'd stop saying, "I love you," without me having to say it first. And even then, it always felt like an obligation. Now I knew why. And the worst part? It wasn't even Nathan. It was her. The way she could look me in the eye and spit lies with the confidence of someone who never thought I'd grow a spine. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Came downstairs in leggings and a hoodie. Hair up, no makeup, that I'm just natural and soft. Look she'd always used when she wanted to play innocent. She poured herself cereal like she hadn't just torched the foundation of our entire life. "You want any?" she asked, not even looking at me. I just stared. That's when it hit her. The air changed. My silence wasn't confusion anymore. It was verdict. She sat down slowly, trying to pretend she wasn't watching my every move. She took one bite, then another. And then, mid-chew, she asked, "What are you planning?" I laughed, quietly, a single breath of disbelief. "I'm planning to see how deep this goes." She stopped chewing. "You think Nathan's the only one?" I asked. Her mouth froze mid-sentence. "Oh yeah, I went through more than just your messages. I pulled the phone records. I checked the location history on your apps. You forgot we shared an account on more than one thing." Her eyes widened just slightly. "That dinner with your friend from yoga last month?" I said. "You were at a hotel. You left at 3:17 a.m. I know because you Ubered, and guess who pays the account?" Her spoon clinked against the bowl. "You think you're clever, but you're lazy, sloppy. You left fingerprints on everything because you assumed I'd never look. And you were right, I didn't. Until now." She stood up, tried to shift the power by getting louder. "You invaded my privacy. You think you're the victim, but you've been controlling and obsessive and boring for months. What did you expect me to do? Just rot in this house waiting for you to become interesting again?" That was it. That was the real her. Ugly, sharp, proud. I stood too. Slowly. Measured. "I expected you to at least have the decency to leave before turning me into a fool. But you couldn't do that. You needed the show. You needed someone to clap while you lied." She crossed her arms. "So what now?" Now. Now was the question, wasn't it? I didn't answer. I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and left. Not because I was running, but because the next part of the story didn't need her in the room to begin. She didn't know what I'd found yet. The other name. The one that wasn't Nathan. The one that would crack this whole thing wide open. I didn't drive anywhere specific. I just needed space, enough physical distance between me and her to stop my hands from shaking. Not from fear. From control. That sharp, burning kind you summon when everything in you wants to rip the mask off someone and scream, "Just admit it." But this wasn't about confession anymore. I already had the truth. Now I wanted the whole shape of it. Nathan was just the surface. The other name I found buried in her app history? It wasn't even from her texts. It was from a rideshare account she forgot was still synced to our old tablet. I hadn't opened it in over a year, but something told me to check. I searched the rides going to and from our house over the past 6 months. A couple stood out not just for the time of night, but for the destinations. One hotel twice, a private condo near the Arts District, and one residential address in a suburb too far from any of her friends. So I looked it up. The address belonged to my coworker, Bryce. Yeah, Bryce. The guy who'd helped me install the new fence in our backyard last fall. The guy who texted me memes during meetings. The guy who once looked me in the eye and said, "You're lucky, man. Your girl's legit. She holds it down." Turns out she held a lot down. I stared at his address on Google Maps for 15 full minutes. I replayed every interaction. Every time he'd smiled at me like we were brothers. Every stupid joke we shared over cheap whiskey. Every single detail snapped into place like a morbid puzzle I didn't even know I was assembling. The first time she visited his place was 3 months ago. The day she told me she was going to her sister's to help pack for a move. I remembered it because I offered to go with her and she snapped, said, "You always make things about you. Just let me do something on my own." And she did. All on her own. At his house. She even ordered food to his place. Thai, same order we used to get when we stayed up late watching trash TV. Except this time she shared it with him. My favorite dish. Ordered on my dime. I drove home without thinking. When I walked in, she was standing by the kitchen island, phone in hand, dressed like she had plans I probably wouldn't have been invited to. "You're back," she said, tone light, pretending nothing had ever happened. "I know about Bryce," I said. Her body froze, but her voice didn't flinch. "Who?" "You know who." Silence. Then came the shrug. That small, venomous shrug. The one people give when they've already accepted your pain as the price of their fun. "So what?" she said, placing her phone down. "What now? You want to list names? Stack them up and see how high they go." The room went quiet. She didn't deny it. She leaned into it. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me broken, furious, flailing. Because if she could reduce me to rage, she wouldn't have to explain. But I wouldn't give her that. "I thought Nathan was the line," I said. "I thought you had one. But it turns out this isn't even about love or attention, is it? It's about power." She stepped closer, eyes narrowed, voice low. "Don't talk to me about power. You walk around like a martyr. Like I should worship you for being nice. You were never enough." There it was. The full unmasking. And suddenly I felt lighter. Because once someone shows you exactly who they are, with no filters, no pretenses, just raw venom, you stop questioning if you were the problem. You just start walking toward the solution. And I had one. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. But she was going to find out. Soon. And not the way she expected. I didn't respond. Not to her words. Not to the little monologue she'd clearly rehearsed for the moment she lost control of the narrative. I just stood there watching her. Not as my wife. Not even as a person. As a problem. A puzzle. One I was now very, very interested in solving. I went upstairs. Closed the bedroom door behind me. Sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. Not out of impulse. I'd already started this 2 nights ago. Quietly. While she was in the hospital pretending to be asleep, I'd already begun collecting everything. See, what she didn't know, what none of them ever suspect, is that the quiet ones remember. The ones you treat like wallpaper are the ones who notice everything. I had full access to our joint accounts. Bank statements. Credit cards. The shared cloud storage. I'd gone through everything, tagging expenses, printing logs. Every rideshare, every strange transaction, every reservation. I even called the hotel once, pretending to be her brother who thought she was in danger. They confirmed she had checked in with a man named Bryce. That call was the last piece I needed. I created a folder titled Exit. Inside it, I put everything: PDF scans, screenshots, voice memos I'd recorded when she started gaslighting me in the hospital, notes of timelines. Organized. Time-stamped. Neutral tone. No emotion. Just the kind of evidence lawyers salivate over. She didn't know it yet, but she was going to walk away with nothing. We didn't have kids, but we had property. A house with her name technically on it, but I'd paid 82% of the down payment. I had proof of every wire. And thanks to her little affairs, I had grounds for a legal strategy that would split her spine. I booked a consultation with a divorce attorney, one who specialized in high-conflict separations. I sent them the file. They called me an hour later and said this is one of the cleanest documentation trails we've seen in 6 months. We'll bury her. And I smiled. Not because I wanted to ruin her. Because I wanted her to see what real consequences looked like. The next morning I was up before her. I made coffee. Cleaned the kitchen. Moved around the house like nothing was wrong. Let her believe she'd won the silence game. Let her sit in the illusion a little longer. At 10:34 a.m. my phone dinged with a calendar reminder, call 1, lawyer, 10:45 a.m. She walked into the kitchen right after. You seem chipper today, she said, eyeing me over her mug. Yeah, I said, not looking up. Just slept well. She smiled. A weird, satisfied smile, like she thought I'd finally caved, that I was pulling back into orbit around her gravitational pull. She still had no idea. That night, I went into the guest room and started packing. Quietly. Just a few things, essentials. Passport. Documents. The watch my dad gave me. The folder marked exit was already backed up to a secure drive. She walked by the door and leaned against the frame. What's this? I'm heading to a friend's for a few days. Since when do you have friends? Ah, there it was. The jab. The needle. But I was too far past the sting to feel it. Since I stopped lying to myself. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, confused, her power slipping out of her hands like sand. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. I zipped the bag, walked past her, and didn't look back. Because the next move? That was already in motion. I didn't go to a friend's house. That was just the line I fed her to keep the air calm before the storm hit. I checked into a short-term rental under a different name, a place downtown with a view of the city just far enough from everything familiar. It wasn't fancy. It was quiet, clean, mine. The kind of space that lets you hear your own thoughts without them bouncing off someone else's ego. By the next morning, the lawyer had already filed the petition. Everything was prepped with evidence attached. Grounds? Infidelity. Multiple documented incidents. We requested a full audit of all shared assets, a halt on any major transactions, and an immediate freeze on the joint account until the court date. At 9:12 a.m., she got served. I didn't see it happen, but I imagined her face, confused, defensive, then furious, and then the text came in. Her, "Are you serious right now?" I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, her, "You're actually going to do this? You think this makes you the bigger person?" Still silent. Her, "You are unbelievable. You're not the victim here. You don't get to play that card. I made mistakes. Sure. But you're blowing everything up because your ego's bruised." There it was. Not an apology. Not even a denial. Just blame. She called next. I watched the screen light up with her name and let it ring out. I wasn't ready to hear her voice weaponize itself again. I wanted her to sit in the silence, the same silence she once used to punish me. The lawyer called that afternoon. Said she'd already responded with a countermessage through her own attorney, shocked, defensive, and completely unprepared. She hadn't expected the paperwork to be this fast, this complete, this brutal. "You caught her off balance," the lawyer said. "That's good. She'll scramble. She'll try to get sympathy or twist the narrative. Don't engage." So I didn't. The next morning, her sister called me. We hadn't spoken in months. She was quiet, careful. She said, "You're filing for divorce." Yeah. She's not handling it well. Neither did I. When I found out, there was a pause on the line. Then she said something I didn't expect. She told me about Bryce. She laughed about it. Said you'd never do anything because you're too scared to be alone. I didn't reply. Just let the silence do the talking. "I just wanted you to know," she added, "not everyone around her agrees with what she's done. Some of us see through it." Thanks. I hung up. And that's when it really hit me, the empire she built of control, of lies, of manipulation, it wasn't just crumbling. It was collapsing. Quietly. From the inside. She had spent so long pretending she held all the cards, she never realized I'd learned how to build a new deck. I spent the rest of the day in that quiet apartment drafting a letter. Not for the court. For her. Not angry. Not pleading. Just clear. I told her what I knew. What I saw. What I endured. I didn't curse. I didn't yell. I outlined her choices, her words, her actions, and I stripped every layer of performance from them. Then I ended it with a line she'd never expect. You lie better than most, but I heal louder than you ever loved. I sent it, then blocked her number. And for the first time in months, I slept like a man who didn't need to wonder what would happen next, because I was the one deciding it. The fallout didn't come in an explosion, came in pieces. First, through mutual friends. Texts from people we hadn't seen in months suddenly popping up. Hey man, heard something weird from her. Everything okay? She was already trying to spin it. The usual script. The cold husband. The emotionally distant marriage. How she felt invisible. How I shut her out. But I was ready for that. I wasn't looking for a pity parade. I was building a firewall. I sent short, direct replies. I'm good. She made her choices. I made mine. No details. No emotion. No fire to add to her flames. What she didn't expect, though, was how quickly the truth would start to leak through her own people. Her lies were sharp, but shallow. She'd used too many of the same excuses with different people. Some started to notice the overlap. Her sister texted me again a few days later. She's unraveling. She said you hacked her phone. That true? I laughed. Not out of humor, out of predictability. I replied, nope, just finally paid attention. Then came the real crack. On the 5th day of silence, she emailed me. Subject line, we need to talk. She'd never used that tone before. Not in emails. She usually relied on sarcasm or guilt. But this time she sounded cornered. I waited. Didn't respond right away. Let her sit in the suspense. The next email was longer. You're making a huge mistake. We both said and did things. Don't throw away years just because things got hard. Relationships go through phases. I don't think you're seeing this clearly. We need to talk in person, not through lawyers. And there it was, the subtle pivot from deflection to desperation. The woman who once looked me dead in the face and said, you were never enough, was now pretending we were just in a rough patch. I didn't respond. The next morning, she showed up at my office. Not the front desk. She waited near the parking lot, standing by her car like she had the right to show up unannounced in a life she no longer had access to. I walked past her without stopping. Seriously? She snapped. You're just gonna pretend I don't exist now? I turned, calm as ever. You made sure of that. You think this makes you a hero? She hissed, stepping closer. You think this is strength? Running away? No, I said. Strength is staying quiet while someone dismantles your life and still choosing not to become like them. She didn't know what to say. Her mouth opened, then closed. And for a second, a real second, I saw something like panic in her eyes. Not because she lost me, because she lost the game. I turned and walked away, feeling no rage, no ache, just freedom. And the best part? I hadn't even dropped the final card yet. She thought this was over. She hadn't seen the final email. From someone she really didn't want to hear from. The email came late. Timestamp. 1:17 a.m. I was lying on the couch in the quiet apartment, the city humming low in the distance. I almost didn't check. Thought it was just more legal updates or the lawyer confirming next steps. But it wasn't from the lawyer. It was from her best friend. A woman she'd known for nearly a decade. One of her so-called ride-or-dies. The same one who toasted us at our wedding. Called me the calm to her fire. I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since the tension started crackling beneath the surface of our marriage. The subject line was one word. Sorry. Inside, it read, I don't know what to do anymore. She's spiraling, and I can't lie for her anymore. I've covered for her too long. It's eating me alive. You didn't deserve this. You need to know everything. I sat up. She included screenshots. Dozens of them. Chats between her and my wife. Months of coordination, cover stories, fake photos, even shared alibis. The girls' trips that never happened. The made-up work conferences. And the worst one, A conversation where my wife bragged about how easy it was to fool me. Called me a placeholder with a checking account. That one sat in my chest like a stone. But it wasn't rage that came. It was clarity. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about calculation. It was designed. I wasn't even a person to her. I was a convenience, an accessory, a backdrop she used to color her real story, which had nothing to do with love and everything to do with control. Her friend ended the email with, "She doesn't know I'm sending this. I don't care if it ruins everything between us. I can't protect someone who treats people like props." I'm sorry. I stared at that message until my eyes burned. Not because of pain, because of how sharp the pieces had become. And how much clearer the game was now that I'd seen the full board. She'd made her whole life a performance. And now her co-star was switching sides. The next morning, I forwarded the screenshots to my lawyer. He called 10 minutes later. "This is gold," he said. "She won't just lose everything. If she tries to push back, we can have her buried in court before she even knows what happened." I didn't reply. Because for the first time, I didn't need revenge. I had something better. I had every mask she ever wore. And I was about to hand them all back to her in front of a judge. Court wasn't loud. It was colder than I expected. Clinical. Efficient. No outbursts, no chaos, just paperwork, legal language, and the quiet echo of lives unraveling under fluorescent lights. She came in dressed like someone trying to win sympathy. Conservative colors. No makeup. Eyes cast downward as if looking vulnerable could erase everything she'd done. I didn't look at her. Not out of anger, out of detachment. She was no longer someone I recognized. Just a stranger sitting at a different table, wondering how her spotlight had turned into a cage. My lawyer presented everything. The file. The messages. The hotel receipts. The friend's email. The rideshare data. All of it. Line by line. Without a single ounce of performance. The truth didn't need dramatics, it stood on its own, sharp and undeniable. Her attorney tried to push back. Claimed emotional neglect, that old, lazy argument people use when they can't deny facts but want to blur the story. He even suggested we try mediation. That maybe this didn't need to be punitive. But she didn't speak. Not once. She just sat there, eyes twitching every time another exhibit came up. I watched her hands, how they gripped the edge of the table tighter with each passing truth. The judge was firm. Asked her if she had any objection to the documentation. She shook her head. That was the only moment I saw the real her, the version stripped of arrogance without any rehearsed lines left. Because there were no more cards to play. No more charm to weaponize. She wasn't in charge anymore. Final ruling, the house was awarded to me. The joint accounts were split with all major assets leaning heavily in my favor due to infidelity. Her attorney requested leniency. My lawyer simply handed the judge the last piece of evidence, a printed screenshot of her own words. "I use him. He won't leave. He's too soft to." I didn't have to say a word. She left the courtroom without looking back. I walked out lighter than I had felt in years. Not because I won, but because I ended it my way. On my terms. With my dignity intact. I went back to the apartment that night. Poured a drink. Sat on the balcony and watched the lights flicker across the skyline. She tried calling once more. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. This wasn't revenge. This was closure. And if anyone reading this finds themselves wondering whether they're crazy for noticing the silence, the distance, the lies, you're not. You're just waking up. Don't ignore it. And when you do walk away, don't do it with rage. Do it with precision. With proof. With the kind of silence that doesn't beg, it buries. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all.